Hi everyone, I'm Peyton from Rackets Runners, and today we're going to dive into two of Brooks's new plated shoes, the Hyperion Elite 5 and the Hyperion Max 3. We're also going to use this as an opportunity just to dive in and give a little bit of an explanation about plated shoes in general, the different types of plates, and why you would use one plate over another plate over a normal running shoe. So, what is a plated shoe and how do they work? A plated shoe is typically more of an elite level shoe, or what someone would call a super shoe, that allows you to run longer and faster using less energy. There's two different categories of plated shoes out there. One is carbon plated shoes and the other one is non-carbon plated shoes. Non-carbon plated shoes will typically use more of a plastic type material like nylon in place of a carbon plate, and we'll talk about why they do that in a moment. But let's talk about more of like the physics of how a carbon plated or a nylon plated shoe works to help you go faster for longer. Typically, plated shoes have a very light, soft foam that is used for greater protection and recovery during your long runs. Again, typically these are more race style shoes where you are going to be pushing as hard as you can to get the fastest time possible. And so you need greater protection for that type of run. Now, because the cushioning that they use is so soft, they need something stiff in the midsole to counterbalance that, to also give you that propulsiveness and that responsiveness in the shoe. If you've ever worn a more maximalist style shoe or a more premiumly cushioned running shoe, you can tell when if the cushioning is too soft. It feels nice on your long runs, but you do lose that speed and springiness that helps you go for faster runs. So these plated shoes kind of bridge that gap. What they do is they have that really thick cushioning in the bottom of the shoe, you can see here. And then what they do is that they add a plate on top of that. So let's get into the different types of plates in the shoe. I'll start with the most, I would say, well-known plate, just because it is the most elite running shoe plate that all of the elite marathoners and racers use. And you see a lot of people on social media probably wearing these types of shoes as well. Think your Nike Alpha Fly and such. What a carbon plate does is that it is a much stiffer and more responsive plate than a plate like a nylon plate. The carbon plated shoes, because they are at that higher level and they're stiffer, they use a much lighter cushioning system, which doesn't last as long as a normal trainer or a nylon plated shoe. It does have a much shorter lifespan of 100 to 200 kilometers compared to the around 700 kilometers of a traditional running shoe. Again, the carbon plated shoes are designed a bit more for pros and for very aggressive runners whose main goal in their racing is speed. This is typically a race shoe. It has a much more aggressive and stiff carbon plate that springs you forward a lot more, and you do need to be running a certain pace to kind of feel the full effect of these shoes. So let's get into a nylon plated shoe. Nylon plated shoes are a great bridge between, you can use them for racing, but they're a great bridge from going from a normal running shoe to a carbon plated shoe. The nylon plate is still very stiff, but it's a little bit more flexible than the carbon plated shoes, and then they tend to last a little bit longer. So people who are wanting to get into plated shoes and either A, don't want to commit to the price tag of a carbon plated shoe, or they want their shoes to last like 700 kilometers, would want to go with the nylon plated shoe. All right, so let's get into Brooks's plated shoes. Brooks's nylon plated shoe is the Hyperion Max 3. You can see here that there is a very aggressive stack height on this shoe, and you can even see the nylon plate peeking through the bottom of the shoe as well, which is pretty cool. They use their nylon speed vault plate in this shoe for that propulsion forward. The Hyperion Max 3 does have a very aggressive stack height, especially compared to the Hyperion Max 2. The Hyperion Max 3 is actually 10 millimeters more stack height in both the front and the back of the shoe compared to the 2. In the Hyperion Max 3, the heel stack height is 46 millimeters and the toe stack height is 40 millimeters. So overall, there is a 6 millimeter heel drop in this shoe, 46 40, and that's 10 millimeters more stack height than the previous version. So that is a very big change in this shoe. Fit wise, I do have to say the first thing I noticed when I put this shoe on is how narrow the shoe was. This is a shoe that comes in both men's and women's sizing, so this was a woman's standard width shoe, but when I put it on, I immediately felt how narrow it was. I did find the first time I wore it, my toes did go a little numb because of the narrowness. Now, this is easily remedied. We have shoe stretchers, and so I stuck one in there and left it overnight, and it was fine the next day. So I think this, if you don't have a narrower foot, this is a shoe that most people would probably need to break in a little bit. But once it did stretch out a bit, I found it to be super comfortable. Like most racing shoes, it has a very minimal upper. I don't know if you can tell through the camera here, but it is one of those shoes that you can kind of almost see through, and if I was wearing a very bright colored sock, I would easily be able to see through the shoe because they give up a lot of fabric on the upper to make it lighter and more breathable while you're running, because it is a racing and fast-paced long run geared shoe. Lengthwise, it fits true to size. It does fit narrow in the width, but it stretched out pretty easily, so I'm not too worried about that. Compared to the rest of the Hyperion Max lineup, the Hyperion Max 3 has kind of shifted in a different direction than the Hyperion Max 1 and the Hyperion Max 2. Those shoes were definitely more of a fast speed tempo run geared shoe, whereas the added stack height that they put in the Hyperion Max 3 does make it geared for more fast, long distance running, more of a race shoe, more of like a marathon, half marathon shoe. And again, this is a phenomenal shoe if you are curious about plated shoes and you want to give them a try, but you don't necessarily want to commit to the short lifespan and high price tag of a carbon plated shoe. You could go with more of a nylon plated shoe like the Hyperion Max 3, and you'll be able to use it on your longer runs as well, and it will last you the normal about 700 kilometer lifespan of a normal runner that is not plated. I do need to give a disclaimer to this shoe. If you are an elite runner and you are running competitively in races and you're going to win your group or your age group, or you're in, like Corral 1, or if you're looking for a shoe to compete in your Ironman or triathlon, this is technically an illegal running shoe because its stack height is over 40 millimeters. Some will allow it, some won't. The word illegal is very incendiary. There are many shoes that are technically illegal that people are using to run, and it helps protect their feet and everything. Some popular examples of that is going to actually be shoes like the Nova Blast. It's going to be shoes like the Asics Super Blast, the Brooks Glycerin Max. All of those shoes are technically illegal, but if you're not competitive in that tier, it doesn't truly matter, and you should pick the shoe that works best for you and feels best for you. All right, so now let's get into the fastest of fast shoes, the carbon plated shoes. Brooks's carbon plated shoe is the Hyperion Elite. This shoe utilizes their Aris carbon fiber Speedvault Plus plate, first try, and their DNA Gold 100% PIBA cushioning. Essentially what this means is that it has a carbon plate and then it has the softest, most protective cushioning at the same time. So you have the most protection that you can get from cushioning while also getting the most propulsion that you can get out of a shoe from the carbon plate. As for the fit of the shoe, this is a unisex shoe, which essentially means that it is men's sizing, the men's width. If you wear a standard width women's shoe, it is a bit wide. This is the only shoe I've ever put on where I actually had to do a heel lock in the back, but once I put the heel lock on, I felt very locked in, even though it's a D width shoe, and I didn't feel like there was too much room in the forefoot. I also don't think if you have a D width foot that it's going to be too narrow in the front. So it felt like a very good one size fits all shoe, and if you need a little bit of a narrower fit, you can put in a heel lock here, and I felt completely locked in and super comfortable, and I didn't feel sloppy in it at all. Like most carbon plated Elite shoes, it does have a practically invisible upper of the shoe. What that means is that they put as little fabric and material there as possible, so it holds on to your foot, but you're not going to feel it, and it's super breathable. breathable. They put a little bit of padding where it matters. They put a tiny bit in the tongue here to keep the laces from biting into the top of your foot. And then they put a tiny bit of padding around the heel here, but there is practically just mesh for the rest of the shoe. And it provides a super good, lightweight, comfortable fit for the upper of the shoe and is super breathable. All right, so again, what is this type of shoe for? Like I talked about earlier with the carbon plated shoe, this is a race focused shoe. This is for race day. This is to get the fastest time that you can get. This is to get your PRs and get there as fast as possible. These types of shoes, even the nylon plated shoes, you do have to be able to run faster speeds to get the full benefits of that carbon plated shoe. That's where you get the most propulsion from the shoe. These shoes work better the faster you go. You could buy these for training too. Like there's nothing stopping you except your wallet. Again, this is that elite level racing shoe, so it is definitely within the allowances for competitive racing. It has a stack height of 40 millimeters in the heel and 32 millimeters in the forefoot, and it has an 8 millimeter drop. So no worries, you'll be able to use this in your marathons and you'll be able to use this in your Ironmans if you want to. All right, so now that we've gone through all of that, I'm just going to give another quick example of when you would want to use the Elite over the Hyperion Max. If you are looking for that racing shoe and you want to try out that carbon plated shoe and you don't mind the higher price tag and the lower longevity of the shoe, the Hyperion Elite is going to be the shoe for you. If you're wanting to try out a plated shoe but don't want to commit to the carbon plated shoe and you want something that you'll be able to use more in your running and for racing, you're going to want to go with the Hyperion Max 3. For example, if you're training for a marathon and you would want to wear something like this for your race, you could buy a pair of Hyperion Maxes as well. You could use these for training. It'll get you used to that speed and the feel of a plated shoe because it does feel quite different than a normal running shoe. And then you could use a pair of Elites. You could run in a couple long runs in it before your race so that way they're broken in and you know how they feel, and then you could wear these for your race. But your Hyperion Maxes are going to last all of training and you'll be able to use them on race day, whereas the Elite is a race day shoe that you want to use to help get you your PR. You do need to go a certain speed to feel the benefits of a plated shoe. There's no reason you can't wear them if you're running a little bit slower or you're just getting into running. You will just not maybe feel the full capacity of the shoe unless you're running like 5:30 or faster. If you're running like 4 minutes or in the 3 minutes, they're gonna feel much faster than if you're running them in 5 or 5:30. I am by no means anywhere near an elite runner, and even I could feel the differences between these shoes and normal running shoes. When I put them on, I was able to pick up the pace easier. I was able to go faster, to go longer, and it didn't feel as hard as my body, whereas when I go without them, and even if I'm running a little bit slower, if it's faster than I usually go, these felt much easier going at that pace. And I remember I had never worn a carbon plated shoe before I tried these out, and I remember putting them on, and then after I finish a run them, I'm like, wow, like I pushed hard, it felt good, and I was going fast. It's a very interesting feeling. And again, these shoes can be used at any distance. They can be used to run your marathons. They can also be used to run your 10Ks and 5Ks. Again, it just depends on how long you're able to keep up those faster times for. Overall, these types of running shoes are not needed. If you're just getting into running, I would go for more of a standard traditional running shoe, but they are definitely super fun to play around with, especially if you're at a more advanced level and you're starting to want to up your game and be able to go faster. Plated shoes are definitely something to try out because they do help quite a bit, and they are also super fun to run in as well. All right, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed our explanation about plated shoes and our review of the Hyperion Max 3 and the Hyperion Elite. If you're curious to try these out, come visit us in store or check us out online at racketsandrunners.ca.